this is the reason we further develop this technology, and we come up with a Tanh zero-centered sigmoid. So this is the sigmoid activation function, just a little better. Now you can see it is more zero-centered, and the best part is it has a max gradient of 1. So when you input the values and you train the model, you can get a max gradient of 1, which means you can stack more neurons over it. And that's the best part about Tanh activation function. Still, the problem with Tanh, though it's used right now, but when people advance this science a little more, in 2012, they found another activation function that is very widely used nowadays, and it is called ReLU. So ReLU is rectified linear unit, which just basically means if you give me a negative value, I will give a 0, but if you give me a positive value, I will give the value multiplied by some weight. So that's the basis of ReLU. The advantages we get here are significant. The gradient is 1; it is constant. You will never get a problem with this gradient of 1. It's a constant gradient. You can train very deep neural networks. Now the gradient is 1. You can just stack neuron, one neuron above another neuron. You can just go on, and it will never fail, and you can make a very complex network. The problem is this dead zone. But because for every negative value, it gives a value of 0, so the gradient becomes 0, and then it stops learning, which is called dead ReLU, or the dead zone. It's also known as dying ReLU. And people came up with smarter solutions later, and they found out much more, some versions of ReLU which were much better. For example, Leaky ReLU, which is just nothing but if you give me a negative value, I will give you 0.01 multiplied by that input. I will not give you a straight up 0, but I will just give you some value so that the gradient doesn't become 0, but for a negative value, and that can help you. So that's called Leaky ReLU. ReLU is a smooth exponential or negatives. This is better for noise and other things. If we just go to our simulations, we can also see it here. Well, a standard ReLU just goes 0, but a Leaky ReLU never becomes 0. It doesn't have a dead zone. It will still output you some value. You can still make your neural network deep enough for learning complex patterns. And for a ReLU, it becomes a little better, and for CeLU, it becomes more better. The problem is, as you add complexities, the things become tougher. The things become computationally expensive, and they become a problem for to compute. So although ReLU, CeLU are better than Leaky ReLU, they are computationally heavy, and but the thing with the computation is it gets cheaper. So nowadays we have come with GALU, which is the transformer standard, and GALU is basically give me an input and I will map it on a normal function. Okay, I will just map it on a normal function and just multiply it with the input. You just give me an input, I just find its probability here. I find its common distribution, cumulative distribution function here. I just find its value here, I multiply with the x, and I give you a value. So this is GALU. And GALU is nowadays used for GPT, BERT, a lot of high technology, high